and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a sort of continuation really on the diagnosis series. I'm going to finish off the diagnosis series, sort of bring it to a closure if you like. I want to do, in this video, I will get on to the sensory video as well at some point. As I mentioned, I want to do one about sensory issues because I've got a lot to say about that. But I think today I'm going to finish off the diagnosis series to tie that together. So the previous videos then I talked about what led up to the diagnosis and I read out the diagnosis reports. In this video I want to talk about some of the reasons why I might have been missed. I have done a blog article on this as well. If you go on my blog, Autism's Individual WordPress, the link's on my channel. So if you follow that link, I've done a blog on this as well. So you can read it as well as hear me talk about it. So reasons then why I might have been missed growing up. Why was my autism missed? So when I was at school, the teachers called me an enigma. The year one teacher, when my parents went along for a parents' evening, I was called an enigma. They didn't know what to do about me. I baffled them. I think I grew up in the 1990s. I was born in 1987. So my childhood, I grew up in the my childhood was I'm a 90s child. I grew up in the 1990s. And I don't know whether you know this, but Asperger's syndrome didn't actually enter the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, until I think it was 1994, which was when I was which was the year I turned 7. So during my early childhood, at least, it didn't even exist as a diagnosis. So that might have been one of the reasons as well. That really you had to be pretty classic in presentation to actually get diagnosed as autism back then. So these are some of the reasons then why, although I had all the signs of autism were there, I was hiding in plain sight, if you like. First of all, I was a happy child. I was very happy. I didn't, I just got on with life. I was full of zest. I was full of energy. I was an incredibly hyperactive child. My mum said that when I was growing up, I was always on the go. I was running around. I was a very alert child. There was nothing, I was healthy. I was vigorous. I was full of life. Okay. So if you're faced with a child who's very happy and very vigorous and energetic and full of life, maybe, you might be a bit reluctant possibly to kind of want to give them some sort of like medical label maybe, I don't know. Although actually my energy levels, they were extreme. My mum said she didn't really know any other kid who was quite as energetic as I was. I didn't really, I was often on the go. I was very, very boisterous, but happy. I was a happy kid. I didn't complain really, apart from when I was having I did often have tantrums, as I'll talk about in another video maybe. But when I wasn't upset in those extreme moments, I was generally a happy child. I often smiled. I was very giggly, and I just plodded along. Now, there's no reason why you can't grow up autistic and can't be happy. The two are not kind of, if you like. It's not an oxymoron to be, it's not a contradiction to be autistic and happy, despite what you might read about in the media, maybe. But I do think that maybe if you want to get diagnosed, if you want to get, being happy and autistic might be one of the reasons why maybe I was missed. I spoke clearly. That's maybe the second reason why I was missed. Verbal. Being able to speak, language is one of my strengths. Language, I know a lot of words. I've got a very wide vocabulary. I seem to pick up words very easily. Now, Asperger's, in actual fact, the sort of classic Asperger's kind of how can I say, the sort of classic Asperger's picture is of a highly verbal child. But having a, that's one of the main distinctions, or used to be one of the main distinctions with regards to the Asperger's sort of definition is that people with Asperger's are generally very verbal, that language is a strength. But like I said, Asperger's didn't enter the DSM until 1994. So back then, when I was growing up, they might have had more of a sort of classic understanding of autism, that the child wouldn't really speak very much, or might have kind of a stutter or stammer, or not have many words at their disposal, not be able to speak clearly and articulately. I think often if you can speak really well, that can actually be a disadvantage in terms of getting support and getting recognition, because people think, they can speak well, they know all these words, they've got a really wide vocabulary, people don't seem to see past that. But actually, being able to speak clearly and being able to speak well, that's just one facet of communication. There's so much more to communication than being able to speak well. And of course, I often say about myself that I can talk for talk, but can't necessarily walk for walk. So people might if people are just seeing how well I can speak, and and that can be an advantage. It maybe can help me mask the autism a little bit better to avoid stigma. I can use that verbal prowess maybe to my advantage because I've got such a good verbal memory. It can help me maybe memorise certain verbal scripts and maybe help me mask the autism a bit more. But it's quite deceptive because people can forget that I actually do have real struggles, and that although I can speak really, really well and I can use these really long words, and it has helped me to mask the autism. And as I've got older, to be a bit better at holding conversation stuff. I used to not be able to hold conversations at all, but as I've got older, I've sort of learned basic communicative skills in that respect. But that verbal prowess, that's not the be-all and end-all of communication. There's a lot in communication that I miss, a lot of subtleties and a lot of nuances, and it can be very subtle but very profound. And that's not good when it means you don't get the support you need, and it's not good when, growing up, when I didn't get the recognition I needed at that time. So the fact I could speak well might also be one of the reasons why they call me an enigma, because I had learning issues and I really struggled with learning certain things at school. But because I could speak so well and I could read so well and stuff like that, even though I didn't have any comprehension for what I was reading, and that was picked up on, but this kind of disconnect between my really excellent reading verbal abilities but my problems with comprehension, they couldn't make sense of it, so I got called an enigma. So the other reason why I might have been missed, number 3, is that my eye contact was inconsistent. People tend to get, as I mentioned in another video, people tend to get fixated on eye contact as a be-all and end-all in autism, but it's just one potential symptom, problems with eye contact. And I did struggle with eye contact when I was a child, and this was picked up on by the educational psychologist. By the teachers at school. The teachers had observed that my eye contact was poor because I was often staring out the window. Like, they often said that I had my head in the clouds because I was just daydreaming, The work didn't always interest me. I didn't always look a teacher in the eye, I wasn't always that kind of engaged with what I was doing. I had kind of a blank look sometimes, daydreaming. But it was inconsistent because sometimes I did make good eye contact. As the educational psychologist said in a report, sometimes I made good eye contact. Well, I made good eye contact with the educational psychologist, but I think that's because it was in a sort of one-to-one kind of structured environment, maybe less demands, less noise. So it might have been easier for me to do that in that sort of context. So it is very inconsistent, and not all autistic people all the time don't make eye contact. That's a myth. It is true that some autistic people don't make eye contact and will never make eye contact, but we're all different, and not all autistic people all the time avoid eye contact. It can be very inconsistent depending on context, and I do struggle with my eye contact, particularly when I'm talking to people. I often have to look down, because if I look in the eyes at the same time as I'm trying to speak or listen to them, I don't always get all the information. It can be very difficult, and particularly as I'm getting older, I'm trying to not try and force it so much, because as I was growing up, my parents often would say, make eye contact, when we were going to visit relatives. Make sure you look them in the eye, do all these things. They kind of prep me, if you like, beforehand. But it is very, very stressful making eye contact, so I can't read the eyes, what's the point? And it's easier for me to look down and listen. When I'm looking down, I can really listen to what the person's saying a lot easier than if I'm making eye contact at the same time. But eye contact, often autistic people, they do try and mask eye contact, so it can look like they're making better eye contact than is actually the case. So it's inconsistent. But that might have been one of the reasons, again, why I was missed, because it is interesting. The educational psychologist said that I made good eye contact when I was with her, even though teachers have said I didn't make good eye contact, so a bit of a disparity there. Appearances can be deceptive in that respect. So the next reason why I might have been missed was that I didn't have any geeky interests. I had very strong interest, very obsessive interest, got really, really interested in certain things. It was the only things I could think about. The main interest, of course, being food, was one of the main interests growing up. I think I mentioned elsewhere that I used to memorise what kids had to eat in their lunchboxes at school. But my interests weren't geeky. Often when people think about autism and interest, they tend to think about very geeky, a very sort of narrow suite of interests, such as, say, being really interested in computers or maths or numbers or patterns. I wasn't interested in any of that. In actual fact, I really struggle with maths, you know. That was one of my extreme weaknesses. So no geeky interests. You know, I wasn't monologuing about trains or any of these other things that teachers might have thought was like what autism looked like, God knows. And I did tend to keep quiet about my obsessive interest when I was at school, to get very carefully masked. So it was only really my parents, the close family, who were really aware of how intense my interests were. But again, that probably didn't help me. If I had a more obvious interest, like saying trains or computers or maths, that was like lecturing everyone about it at school, you know, that would be a more obvious indicator of autism. So, you know, that might have been one of the reasons. I wasn't good at maths, as I mentioned, you know. One of the stereotypes that autistic people are really good at maths, not me. Absolutely hopeless at maths. Can't do maths, you know, really, really bad. That I think overshadowed autism when I was at school, because I had learning issues, and that was the main reason why the teachers called me an enigma. Look, she can speak really, really well. She can speak, she's got a really big vocabulary, but why can't she do these basic sums? Why can't she name these shapes? Why can't she relate the alphabet, you know? I couldn't tell the alphabet till I was quite old, even I could read. Why doesn't she have any comprehension? What's going on? So yeah, I think that maybe overshadowed it. They were fixated on the fact I had these learning discrepancies, but actually that's a bit ironic, because learning discrepancies are actually one of the red flags for autism, being really good in one area and really bad at another area. But they obviously didn't put two and two together. Simply shy, lacking confidence, immature. I think they put a lot of my issues down to lacking confidence and being immature. Again, which may be overshadowed for autism. I mean, certainly, let's face it, if you're finding it hard to make friends, if you don't have much of a social life, if you're really chronically overwhelmed all the time because of noise and other things, you're going to be a little bit lacking in confidence. But I think they tend to kind of put everything down to lack of confidence, instead of thinking whether or not a lack of confidence is caused by, say, autism, right? You know, so. Yeah, they just seem to put everything down to a lack of confidence and being emotionally immature, but actually these were actual signs of the autism. Sometimes I did play with kids, but so I wasn't aloof. I did try and interact with other kids. I sometimes was engaged in skipping games. I used to love skipping games because they're very rule bound. Once I'd actually mastered how to, you know, engage in those sort of games, I really enjoyed them. I did have an on-off friendship when I was at primary school. I didn't develop that friendship until I was about 9 years old. The first time I actually made a friend with someone in my peer group was when I was about 9 years old. Before that point, I didn't have any friends in my peer group. But it was very much on and off, and it was very obsessive friendship because I could only be friends with one person at a time. I did make social overtures, but they were mainly with younger kids. So I was more often than not a loner, but I was a loner within the crowd instead of always being on the periphery. So you know, teachers might have seen this. Oh, look, she's okay. The teachers were aware I struggled to make friends, and that was highlighted on the educational psychology report. You know, that I had interaction problems. That was noted from the moment I started school. But maybe they didn't think of autism because it didn't look classic, because I was trying to interact. It wasn't like I was aloof or anything, and you know, that might have kind of maybe overshadowed it a little bit as well. I did try and interact. It's just I couldn't do it. I didn't know how to do it in an appropriate way. It was often too full on, too intense, or I'd end up just annoying kids. And I didn't realise kids have feelings, so I often ended up annoying them, antagonising them, and, you know, built up a reputation of myself as being a little bit of a weird kid. So I think so as I say, I sometimes played with kids, not aloof, but it was more of the quality of the interaction that was atypical, as opposed to, it wasn't like I wasn't interacting full stop. It was more the fact that when I did try and interact, I didn't do it in an appropriate way. So I think maybe those might be some of the reasons, possibly, why I was overlooked and why I had to wait till I was 21 to actually get diagnosed. We will never know for certain, but I can only speculate. And also, of course, the fact I'm a girl. You know, girls and women historically do get diagnosed later than men. And I didn't, you know, conform to that kind of very classic geeky image that teachers may well have had about autism. Okay, so I'm going to finish there, and in my next video I'm going to look at the signs that I did display when I was a child and talk a bit about them. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you.